And then one day I said to Carolyn, I'm going to have to fall back in love with you. Now that's going to be a challenge. I reckon. Even after 30 years of marriage.
The reason why I love that is so many couples get to that place when things aren't going well. They think that the answer must lie in someone else. I must need to fall in love with someone else. I must, this relationship must have run its course, like my old vehicle that's sitting in the garage. I must need a new one. And you just said that, no, I need to fall back in love with her.
Yep.
I have put everything into this relationship. What do I have to show for it?
This is not what I signed up for.
I'm afraid of what will happen to the kids if we get a divorce. I'm afraid of what will happen to me if I stay in this marriage.
I'm not even sure that I believe in love anymore.
I want to stay married, but I don't even know why, because it's not making me happy.
How can I feel so alone when I'm not even single?
So many people are struggling with this exact thing.
We have to normalize the struggle.
I mean, a perfect relationship, what is that? Does that even exist?
Having a metric to gauge where you are right now.
Staying in isolation, it's a death sentence.
It's almost like being buried alive.
Positive change just doesn't happen overnight. I mean, do you even want it to? Well, no, of course you want it to happen overnight.
This is how we decide to walk in the promise of life more abundantly.
Ultimately, you are the one who decides how good your relationship is.
Take the next step.
Borrow someone else's hope.
Borrow our hope.
Every relationship
always has room to grow.
Welcome to the Let's Grow Together podcast. This is the Grow in Love show with Danny, Elary, and special guests. And Elary, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our wonderful guest for this broadcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we are so excited to have the Decks with us here today. We have Carolyn and her husband, Brendon, and they're visiting, I guess, joining us from Chicago. Visiting. They're joining us from Chicago, and we are so excited because Carolyn has had a lot of work in this space as far as relationships, and also especially with the focus of faith-based relationships. So we're really excited to be able to talk to them and just hear a little bit about their story, some of the struggles that they have had in their relationship and how they've been able to overcome them. So Carolyn, why don't you take it away and introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. It's such a privilege to share. Yes, we're both from New Zealand, but I'm from a small family in Wellington. Grew up there, quite contrary to Brendon's family experience. Unfortunately, mine was quite dysfunctional, and there was quite a lot of trauma as a child growing up, which led me to start, I guess, the theme of my life, which is being on the move. So yes, in my teens, my sister looked after me and her husband for a year. I came back and had a year with my dad, or 6 months really. And then I ended up in Kansas as an exchange student. I know, international exchange student. And then I got back to New Zealand. Didn't really have family around. I was still quite young. And I managed to get, I started off at McDonald's and quickly went up the management ladder, which was kind of awesome. But yes, I ended up in the travel industry, and there I stayed until we got married and had children. But then the travel theme never stopped. We ended up taking 4 kids to Australia, and had another little blessed boy, William, and then kept following this one around the world, and ended up in America. So yes, I guess the theme of my life really has been on the move, and I've been in traveling a lot, 25 years away from home. But I guess I learned early on that we have choices, and subconsciously, and then more intentional as I got older, that choices really matter, and that we actually I want people to be aware that we have choices, and that we respond, how we respond is key. So yes.
Beautiful. I love that, because choice is such an important part of every relationship.
Yeah.
because it's so indicative. It'll tell us how we're going to be feeling about a relationship by how we choose to look at it. And
Yes.
certainly I know you guys have had kind of a relationship where, Brendon, you traveled a lot.
Yes.
And
yeah.
so, Carolyn, you were home with 5 kids. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
A lot of the time. And I know when we were first getting to know each other, you kind of talked about that and how you were able to kind of reframe that, where some people might have that be a real problem within their
Yes.
relationship. But
Yes.
instead, why don't you go ahead and speak to that kind of?
Sure. I'm really thankful actually for the seeds my dad planted, and that was basic instruction before leaving Earth. I hold that as my authority, and for those that don't know what that is the Bible. And I've chosen to, I mean, I know he chose me, let's just say that out front, but then I chose to respond, and I've chosen throughout my life to be in Bible Study International, BSF, and that has been absolutely instrumental to your point, how I see things, but most importantly, how I see myself, what I am and what I'm not. And also as a wife, what does that look like biblically? And I remember being at a meeting in Adelaide, actually, and the World Vision general manager was traveling, and his wife came and spoke to us. And she talked to us about the word that means for women in a marriage is helper, but it's the helper that is the same word used for the Holy Spirit. And to me, that was really empowering, because what that meant was unity together. It wasn't above or below. It was God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They're 100% each other and 100% individual. And so I took that into my marriage, that it wasn't 50-50. He got landed with the boys' jobs when he got home from traveling. I tried really hard to make sure when he got home, those jobs were pretty much done and we could just enjoy each other and the kids.
I think
that's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Danny.
No,
I tried.
Yeah, I know that Elary and Carolyn, you were having such a great vibe. I just wanted to take a minute as a guy and
Yes.
say hi, Brendon.
Hey, no, I was waiting patiently. That's part of our success. I've known him to be quiet, you know.
Yeah, yes. If you don't mind, you know, she shared so much about your story. You know, we know that there is power in perspective. We wanted to give you an opportunity to splash in bits and pieces of Brendon and how that comes into play with what she's already shared in terms of your story.
Sure. Look, I guess, I mean, marriage and having faith and, you know, and believe in one another and then believe in the greater power has been huge. And I mean, my career has been in travel. I've been traveling, you know, a lot through our business, and Carolyn has always been there as like I call the rock that's held everything together. But knowing that when you do get back together, you've got to be for one another. You've got to have that focus for one another. I sort of used to always try and talk to our staff, you know, and things are new people coming into a sales role and they were traveling a lot. And I'd almost say, look, when you get to that front door, you've got to leave the briefcase at the front door and give time to the family, you know, and a little bit to what we were talking to earlier, not allow distractions to get in the way of that time when you need it to be together and showing your commitment for one another. So, but Carolyn clearly is, you know, she's been the strong one, the one that's held family together. But we've had a lot of fun in what we do, and I think that's it. I have a little saying, even for work or anywhere, I say I've got to live with a smile on my dial, and you know, and I try and encourage people that, you know, come on, start the day in a frame of mind that allows you to get through some issues. If you already start the day in the, oh no, what am I doing and where am I? And you walk out of the door grumpy, and then the first phone call I get is something wrong. well, I'm already deep down and pretty, you know, in a dark spot, as opposed to starting the day by saying, wow, this is going to be a good one. And I mean, it's not always possible, but I do live like that. To start with a smile, and don't dwell on major issues. You know, let sometimes issues, you just got to let them go. You've got to realize that you can have a different of opinion. You've just got to learn how to listen to one another on that. Doesn't mean I need to argue to the point of where I'm trying to get my point across and being thing. No, sometimes you just go, all right, that's cool. You, Carolyn, you see it that way. I mean, I might see it slightly different, but I don't need to walk out and win the war. You know, exactly.
Yeah. Now, how many years did it take you guys? Have you always had that?
No.
Now here's where it's gonna get good. Here's where it's gonna get interesting.
It took a while. I mean,
can I just say?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. No, I was this alpha female, which, you know, and his friends he would warn his friends, be careful, don't argue with her. It's just not worth it. And I was that person. And to be honest, you know, after all these years and going through the process of writing, what I realized was, as a child, that shaped me. It hasn't defined me, but I love the fact that he said I was strong, because I learned the meaning of my name, and that is one of the meanings of my name. And I'm also an 8 on the Enneagram, which I don't know if you know what that is, but an 8 is this loud spoken, you know, forthright, black and white person. And I love the Enneagram because it reminded me, no, there is a color, it's called gray. And so I love the fact that Brendon he's always been this, almost the peacekeeper. Even with his friends that wanted to argue with him, he just go, no, that's okay. You have your view. And so I love how God brought us together, because he speaks into what I need to hear, and maybe I speak into a little bit of what he needs to at times, you know, and to the point of 2 is stronger. Well, actually, you know, with God, when you have a rope with 3, it's stronger again. And I do just a little shout out. I did a author combo in this Christian marriage book, and I talk about it in there actually, and it's devotionals from both perspectives, which I love. So yes, I always think we have to have the posture, like you said, of listening well and not having to win the war.
That's really good. So devotionals from both perspectives. We're going to come back to that book, because we want people to know where they can find that.
Yes.
And also benefit from the wisdom that's there. Just really fast, how long have you guys actually been married, if you don't mind my sharing? And
there you go. Well, I'm going to say 33.
33
Yes.
years.
Yes.
Cool. I had to, you know, I've got 32, 33, so I thought I'm going to go with 33. So I got it right.
Yes. So. We've been together longer. And that in itself is kind of a cool story, because, you know, we started dating and we weren't that young. We were in our mid-20s, and things just weren't working that well. And I wasn't about to.
I thought they were working really well.
Wow.
Just to get it right.
Yeah. You know. So for me, you know, I didn't want my feelings to rule my world, right? Rick Warren says that, be very careful that feelings don't control you, because if they do, you can end up down dead-end streets, and you need to identify the truth of that emotion which God's given us. But be careful, feelings do lie, and what you believe, there's a little hidden L-I-E in the middle of the spelling of that word. So anyway, so for me, it was like, well,
okay, Miss Carolyn, I need you to say that one more time. Whenever we have one of those powerful moments, I have to have you just, we can't just pass that. Can you say that one more time?
Okay.
That was good.
So God gave us our emotions because we're created in God's image, right? And so he has love, he is love, but he also, we know stories where he got angry, where Jesus turned the table upside down. He says he's a jealous God. He wants us loving him first. So he has all these emotions. So that's okay to have feelings and emotions. He's gifted them to us, but we don't want them to rule our lives, because feelings, we're also told, our heart is the greatest deceiver and it can lie. So be careful what you believe, because just maybe lying in the middle of the spelling of that word is an L-I-E. So yes.
Feelings can lie. Feelings can lie. Wow.
They can be disillusional, and not just that, they can take you down places that, like I said, aren't really true. So I went back to visit my past, and what I felt wasn't always true.
It reminds me of Elary, what you teach with the reality cycle, and feelings. For so many people who are in romantic relationships, they think that these feelings are like a deity in and of themselves, where they have to rule and reign supreme. And like you so eloquently teach and show that they're not the case. You want to just do a brief for those who are listening, who need to understand how feelings can be overruled?
Sure. I think feelings are very, very important. And when we look at them, of course, everything's been ordained by God. We've been designed by God. When we're looking at feelings from a very almost evolutionary standpoint, I don't want to say evolution because I'm not necessarily in that strict Darwinist school. But as far as the wisdom that has put our bodies together, right? So so what I really focus on is that our feelings are generated by our thoughts.
Yes.
And we can only have the thoughts that are allowed within our beliefs.
Yes.
Like our beliefs are so strong that if something is outside of our beliefs, we can't even have that thought, right? And we can believe something that's true just as easily as we believe something that is a lie.
Yes.
And whatever we believe, that is going to dictate what we feel.
Yes. And what we do.
And what we, exactly. I mean, so that's the reality cycle. The first thing is circumstances. So there's things going on around us. Then we have a thought about the circumstances. And all people are going to have all different kinds of thoughts about the exact same circumstance, right? But from that thought, then comes a feeling. That feeling then moves us to action. And that's when we look at it and that's where it comes in kind of the survival aspect of it, is that when we see something that's a threat, we're going to get a feeling immediately to move us to action. Yes. Right? We're very familiar with that fight, flight, or freeze kind of response. And all emotions are kind of created that way, in that we see something and then we're like, and then our kind of our biology decides what we're supposed to do. And a lot of that has to do with kind of what people might call their childhood trauma, or any kind of what your programming. That's also something that's going to kind of dictate, again, from your beliefs, what kind of thoughts you have. But again, that feeling is meant to move us towards action. Yes. And a lot of times we get very frustrated when the feeling is leading to an action that we know we don't want to take. Yeah. Right. And so this is kind of this idea of white knuckling something, and why it's not effective. Long term, it's not effective to white knuckle something. We have to go back and change our thoughts. Yes. We have to reframe what we believe. And what we believe. Yeah.
Andy Stanley's, I listened to his whole class on this. What you believe has your action, which determines the outcome.
Exactly.
And yes. And so people usually just do what I believe and action outcome, but they don't really engage with the belief. They're not aware, possibly. They just react. And so if you don't like the outcome, you need to go back to the beginning, because isn't that the fool that keeps doing the same thing with a hope for a different outcome?
Right. Exactly.
And one of the things that we are here to do on the Grow in Love show is to normalize that struggle. because we all have it. We all end up on that hamster wheel and thinking these same unproductive thoughts that aren't serving us, that aren't having any positive influence and impact in our lives. And that's why Coach Elary and I started the M Squad. Right. The M Squad is a community of couples fighting together for love that lasts forever. Because when you are in isolation and running on that hamster wheel, you're expending a ton of effort and energy, but you aren't really going anywhere. And so we just want to encourage all of the couples who are listening, if you are in one of those negative feedback loops, if you're on that hamster wheel, don't struggle alone. Let's grow together. Visit themsquad.com or just contact us on our private pages. But this is so good. Now, Carolyn, I am very interested to also learn from you what these feelings are that you had that were lying, because you directly implied that feelings aren't always telling the truth. Did you experience for both of you? I want to know. But Caroline, because you brought that point, I would like for you to answer, and then I want to ask Brendon the same question. Did you experience a feeling that was lying? That is not the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So I talk about it a lot in my book, actually. It's just newly released, Above the Turbulence, Your Ticket Out of Pain to Purpose. And in this book, I really nail home that, and also the whole concept of what we're thinking and believing. And so first off, because my poor mother was an alcoholic, she couldn't cope with her life. And then my father, he dealt with his marital issues by running away. He was always busy. He was never at home. And there came a day where they said, well, what are we going to do with her? Which was me. And I wasn't at that table. I wasn't invited. It was just this discussion with 3 people, my family. And subconsciously, I must have felt rejected. I must have felt not wanted. I must have felt not worthy, because the parents, the adults in my life, didn't want me.
Yeah,
so,
I know a lot of people can identify with those feelings.
Yes, but then I say subconsciously, because what happened next was that I was given the ticket out, I guess. My sister offered to have me, and that's when I consciously made the decision and the choice to go, not why this happened to me, poor me. It was like, wow, what am I going to do with this opportunity? And I encourage people to not ask why, but what. What can I learn? What opportunity have I got here? I'm not going to waste this opportunity. And I didn't. And that's how I ended up in America, actually, because I got this confidence that perhaps shouldn't have been in me to go, I'm going to apply for that scholarship. And
Miss Carolyn, you're just dropping so many gems. I just have to jump in. Don't ask why, but ask what. That's so simple, but so profound.
It's pivotal. Yeah, because you know what it does? It takes you from being victim to having victory.
Have you thought about how important your marriage is lately? We have been. Coach Danny and I have been thinking about how important every marriage is. And that's why we started the M Squad, couples fighting together for a love that lasts forever. Because we know that couples, gosh, it is harder than you think. After the I do, now what do I do now? So we have the M Squad, an opportunity for you to get out of isolation, to be able to get with other couples, to be able to hear other people. What are they struggling with? Is what you're going through normal? Is this really how marriage is supposed to be? Are there other ways that we can get through these difficult times? The answer is yes. I want you to check it out, themsquad.com. msquad.com to give you the strength that you need, the accountability that you need to make real differences in your marriage.
Now, brother Brendon, you also, I'm sure that you had the experience of having feelings, and we're going to dive deep in just a few moments into some of the struggles that you guys had, that you've begun to share. But were there any feelings that you experienced that weren't the truth, that were a lie, that were something that you needed to pivot from, as you became aware of what really was true?
Yeah. I guess I don't know if I've had something that would have been catastrophic, if I'd gone. But I keep coming back to feelings are driven with surroundings, and like you travel a lot, and sometimes, well, what are you doing, and where am I, and what's going? So I talked a lot about what the strength for Carolyn and I, when you had some of those feelings that might have been just questioning, was trust. And how did trust help us hold things together when, there is a lot of people who are on the road, and that can ask questions. Well, where were you? And look, seriously, you go out and you can be with people and be in places, and then you're going, well, what's Carolyn doing, or what's Brendon doing? But when you just keep coming back to take those feelings away, take those thoughts, and just get back to that, we actually trust in one another. And that's what took a lot away any feelings that you might have had about what was going on, and fear, or it could be anything, it could be jealousy, but it came back to trust got you through those sort of feelings of doubt, I guess, at times. And but I get also, I'm a person who, when you ask me, well, what are the feelings that have been, I've struggled to go back and find some of those, because I like to live on the side of life that says I am smiling and there is good things going on, and stop thinking about the bad stuff and lift it. Now that means you've still got to be a realist, all right? I don't want to be saying that that's all like lovey-dovey, if I put it that way, and just say that everything's perfect, because it's clearly not. But when you have trust and you have love, those feelings, you can put them to one side pretty quickly and get back to what you really know at the bottom of your heart is the reason that you both got together. And I've made decisions, sometimes, on where we're moving to and what we're doing, probably sometimes pretty hastily. And then I've had to trust that Carolyn's going to come along for the ride. And she can probably talk to, well, how did she get to come on that journey? Because I was, when I be blunt, I was already on my way, if you like, in my head, and we were doing that. But again, just trusting that you can do things. I guess some of the feelings were in the middle of my career was I'd been doing a certain task, a job, and I felt really that was all I could ever do. You sort of challenge, and then really with Carolyn's help, and you realise that, no, look, when someone gave you an opportunity, you can lift up. You can do more. And what you've learned from the past is common across, say, industry and across relationships. And you actually just use what you know is right. And that's to do with faith, to do with trust, to do with communication. And you can strive to do anything. And out of that comes getting yourself out of hot spots, as I would call it, or times when Carolyn and I, we may have disagreed on things. May have not seen things in the same light. And at the end of the day, the belief in one another always got you through those periods. You can't, we haven't lived a perfect life. There's no way we have, but we're smiling here. We talk about the good times more than we talk about the bad times. And we embrace those challenges together and those opportunities. And I think that's the key is, Elary, you talked about it right at the beginning of this call. You said, talking about the challenges, and I probably looked the other way. So I'd like to talk about the opportunities rather than talk about the challenges.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna bust in here because Brendon, I just love so many of the things that you're talking about here, and I love that we're talking about beliefs and also the kind of the idea that we ultimately choose our beliefs.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. Fear is kind of like a response.
Yep.
We talk about that we have this fear response. We don't really have a faith response, right? We don't have a trust response. We have a protection response, right? And if we are constantly living in that response or that reaction part of our lives, and especially into our relationships, we're not going to find the fulfillment that we want to have, because that's just not how life is designed. Exactly. Right. If you're really going to be fulfilled, it's going to have to take effort on your part.
Yep.
And really, it's so much of it is about what is really true in your relationship. And whatever is going to be true in your relationship is what you decide is true in your relationship. And so, and sometimes, when you're in a dark part of your relationship, we might have a couple who's watching this podcast right now and saying, sure, it's fine for the Decks. Look at how well they get along. Look at how respectful he is. Look at how resourceful she is. They've got it better than we've got it. But really, it's so much of it is the reframing.
Yes.
Or just how you're deciding what you're going to look at. And really, relationships take energy.
Yep.
They take a lot of energy, and they take positive energy.
They also take there's the energy there, but it also takes, again, what we were talking about, that you've got to focus on one another. You've got to give that time. You've got to be seen to be real. I mean, there's too many times that you can just sense. I mean, whether it's a meeting at work, that someone's not really listening to you. They're looking through you. They're looking at what's going on outside, or they're thinking about their next text message or the next email. And that's what I talk about when you come home from work. You've got to dedicate time to your relationship. I mean, it's totally wrong if I thought I can travel all the time, walk in the door, tell my family, look, just give me half an hour. I'm just going to clear some more messages. I'm going to take another phone call. I'm going to do this. We lose interest in one another when that's happening. And you've got to learn that. I mean, it's the same for everything you do. You put focus. I call it going deeper, not wider, and many, in just about anything you do. And your relationship is that. If you're shallow and you just think, I've given my half an hour, I threw 2 balls out the backyard with the kids, and I said hi to the wife, and I asked her how was her day, but I never listened to what she said, and then thought, right, I've done my bit. Now I can go off and do what I want to do. You are going to be in a tough spot, and you are going to have going, well, why is it not working for me? You've got to give time to relationships, the same as you have to give time to your career, the same as you have to give time to your children. If you're a sports person, you have to give time to your training to be really good. You can always tell a person who skips training in a sports team, right? They don't really make it to the big time. Well, life's the same. When you take shortcuts, you get payback. And when you give time, you get payback, but I call it payback with love.
I was listening to Rick Warren, and to those couples that are maybe going, like, to your point, oh, well, look at them, they've got it together or whatever. We haven't, things are on the rocks. And Rick Warren was saying that you need to stop and pause and understand what is love and what isn't love. Love is actually a verb. Love is an action. And it says love is what? Patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. These are all words of action. And so Rick Warren would say, okay, forget how you feel. If you act kindly, if you act respectfully, if you act with intention when your loved one comes in the door and you mean it, it's genuine and your motive is correct, you're doing it from the heart, then guess what? Your feelings will catch up.
That's
so
good.
He said, you gotta act, don't care how you feel, just get on with it and do it with the right heart. And remember, stop and pause. I think it's really important if you stop and reflect and pause and remember what you used to do. Ask your question, what did I do when we were first dating or when we were first engaged? What were those little special things we would do? I mean, I did used to write on my business card, I love you, in his socks when he traveled, and kind of cute things like that. I don't have business cards, so I don't do that anymore. But, you know, I mean, just be intentional about perhaps acts of kindness. You know your partner's love language.
Yes.
And act on those things. And guess what? The feelings will return. And practice. Keep practicing.
We love all of that. We love all that. You guys sound like you have 2 or 3 more books inside of you right now.
Not me.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but before she started, you were the one that set her down that road.
Yeah.
But
and I didn't even realize. I didn't even know I was sending her down that road.
Yes. Now, in order to just really give hope to couples who are in a dark and difficult situation, would you mind taking us down some of the most difficult portions of those 33 years? Like, what was it like when it wasn't, lollipops and rainbows? How deep was the darkness? What were the emotions? What was that experience like when things weren't going well for you?
Okay. Well, experience for me would be, I can recall a day in Adelaide, in South Australia, just thinking, look, I'm not sure this is working out. I'm not sure, that everything's working. Sitting in my office like at 2 a.m. in the morning and writing Carolyn a letter and almost like saying, well, and then realized when I'd written it, like, how stupid was I? I mean, I hadn't even talked to her about my feelings.
I was going to say, I don't remember this.
No,
I didn't get the memo.
No, but I guess, I mean, we have been fortunate, so there's not a lot of experiences, but the times when I did, I mean, I guess the advantage was I stopped. I wrote down what I was thinking, and in the end, I tore it up and told myself, get real, it's just there isn't anything better on the other side of the fence. And it is 9 times out of 10, the part when I stopped and wrote what I really was feeling, it ended up being that it was my problem, not Carolyn's. And it made you stop and reflect that actually it was me. And I think that was the part of there. I guess fortunately too, I find times when I'm traveling, when I'm on a plane and things like that, it's a time for reflection. And so sometimes if you brought things back to reality because you had time to think. And I guess sometimes you do need some space. I mean, I think Carolyn and I's relationship's been pretty good. And some people would question, well, you've traveled all. Well, I actually think that makes us stronger. I mean, you say we live in Chicago. I don't know if I could live downtown and work downtown and be here all the time and living in an apartment when I'm used to a house with 5 kids in a backyard, but I travel. So I love coming back to Chicago. I love turning back up here on a Wednesday or a Thursday or whatever day it is and going to Carolyn, let's go out, because I've been out in rural America and rural in Canada, and I love coming back to the vibe of a city. Well, your relationship's a bit like that. Every now and then you do need that space. You need that walk. You need that time. And that then comes to trust, because there's a lot of people that when things aren't right, they don't want to let the other partner out of their sight sort of feeling. It's almost like you can't let go. You got to learn that love will come back, and you have to sometimes, and I don't mean let go like, go walk about for 6 months. I mean, just go for a walk for half an hour. Just think about it. And 9 times out of 10, I believe you'll find that the problem rests with me, the person who's doing the walk, not your partner.
Yes.
I mean,
I love so much about what you're talking about there, Brendon, because, as relationship coaches, we're always encouraging people to write down their feelings. Right. That's such an important step to be able to kind of get it out of your head and get it to a place where you can actually look at it. Right. And that's what you were able to do. Do you kind of remember the circumstances? Because what we're really looking for and hoping for our audience is to have like almost a very specific kind of kind of an experience. So were there problems as far as, I don't know, was it? I'm just thinking about the things that kind of always cause divorce. Right?
Look, it was a combination. It was probably frustration of moving to a new city, and feeling that my mates, if you like, were, weren't deep in the new city. My real mates were back in New Zealand. Frustrated, with a few things at work, and then that lent over to probably me being frustrated with Carolyn because, I don't know, she was probably having some fun and things, and I felt I wasn't. I mean, that maybe as simple as that. I saw Carolyn enjoying herself through a period when I was frustrated, and that annoyed me. And and the problem was I couldn't bring myself around. So I sat in those places and started blaming her for me being, I won't say depressed, but I mean, just down on myself, and seeing her in her normal, you can just listen to when she talks. I mean, she would have been talking and laughing and carrying on with a whole bunch of friends, that I was just not there in that space then. And I allowed it to dwell on me, and that was wrong. I mean, I guess that's the part. I mean, but we've been lucky. There isn't too many days that, or blessed, I would say, not too many days that I've had those moments. And I think again, the strength is trust, give each other space, but then dedicate that time to one another, and learn how to talk to each other. I mean, and Carol and I are going to go through the next stage. I mean, here I am thinking about maybe I am going to retire. And then I sit here and I go, much to her dislike, I said, how am I going to talk to you like for 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? I mean, my goodness me. And that's the next challenge. And I remember driving in the car. We used to always have 5 kids in the car, and it would be like always there would be something going on around us, there just was. And then one day I said to Carolyn, they're all gone. And, I don't mean it jokingly, but I said, I'm going to have to fall back in love with you. Because
I love that. I love that.
And you've got to realize that those things are going on, and there are different stages. And the next one will be us going from me being away all the time to us being together 24/7. Now that's going to be a challenge. I reckon. Even after 30 years of marriage.
Writing another book.
There he is. The reason why I love that is so many couples get to that place where there's another resource that talks about the 4 seasons of marriage.
Yep.
But when things aren't going well, they think that the answer must lie in someone else. I must need to fall in love with someone else. I must, this relationship must have run its course, like my old vehicle that's sitting in the garage. I must need a new one. And you just said that, no, I need to fall back in love with her.
Yep. Exactly.
So good.
One thing, just on that note, for me, I wrote in a chapter actually, and it's called Travel Light. And I was in a dark place where, yes, I had 5 children. Brendon was never at home. Well, not during the week. And I'd go back to New Zealand. We looked like a traveling circus, mind you. And and I would pride myself on us traveling light, but emotionally, I was so stressed before we were going. There was a certain member of the family that when we went home, I would be criticized and picked on constantly. And the first realization was that I was tossing and turning at night. I couldn't sleep. I was grumpy. I was attacking him and the kids. And fortunately, I had a great church, and we had Friday Faith Lift. not facelift, but faithlift. And I realized, you know what? I need to go and talk to Pastor Richard. And that was the first thing I learned. I needed to go and share that. And I even humble myself in my book saying, well, you may ask, well, why didn't I talk to him about it? I didn't. I was so embarrassed. I was a little ashamed. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm hiding my feelings now from him because of shame and fear. And this is where feelings lie, right? Because if only I'd been honest and opened up to him how I felt, that could have been a good solution. But no, I did go and share it with my pastor, and he was amazing. He just flew some kites for me. I'm not going to tell you because I hope you're going to buy my book and read it and find out what the blessings were in this. There were enormous blessings and life lessons, are amazing. So I encourage, I was a travel agent, so I write it as a travel agent. I say, you got to travel light. And Rick Warren always says you need a checkup from the neck up. and so take short accounts of what you're thinking is really crucial, because that's when they fester and there's nothing healthy out of that. So yes, that was a dark place for me, but I turned to somebody who I could trust, a Christian, because if it's just your girlfriend and she goes, yeah, I totally agree. No, he's just such a slob, or he does nothing, be careful. So you have to be have wisdom as to who you're going to seek advice from. And
so are you implying, Sister Caroline, that not all help is good help?
I am. Yeah, because you know what? Even if you go to a counselor, you could be just feeding them a whole lot of whatever to get a whole lot of whatever back, right? So, somebody that you look at the fruits of their life, see if you can trust them, see if they are going to be honest with you, and go, now hang on a minute, back up.
But can I just interrupt there? You have to be honest yourself.
Yes.
Because too many times and it comes back to when I used to sit and write, it took that time to write it because you wrote frustrating. And when you really looked at the words you wrote, you were blaming, say if I was blaming Carolyn, but the honest part was that I should have been blaming myself. And when you go sometimes to talk to someone about the issues, quite often, if you haven't just stopped for a second, you actually download and it's all one-sided part. And the person hearing that goes, well, clearly this person's got something wrong with them because, you've told me they're doing it. Well, that's not always true. Not quite the case, I mean, through negotiations, say at work, it's always, there is a middle road, there is something on both sides. And I think that's for a good counselor, you've got to be also, and that's what made a good pastor there, was listening and saying, I'm probably hearing, but I'm guessing there's probably a little bit more under the bonnet or under the hood here than maybe you're sharing up front. And how do you get that out of people to start talking? That's the key, because sometimes we just want. I used to say to Carolyn like that with an interior decorator. You do a modification on your house, and the interior decorator turns up, and Carolyn, the first thing she'd say, for example, well, I'm going to exaggerate. She said, I love yellow paint and white walls, for example. And I'd say, the interior decorator, guess what he's coming back with? Yellow walls or yellow paint and white walls. Because you gave him his easy answer. You should have just said, hey, it's an open, you tell me what you think would look good. And that's what you get paid to do. Once we sort of start channeling people, even experts, into a corner, the easy answer is for them just to give you back what you want to hear. And that's tough sometimes, for us to hear it back, but to hear the truth. But, and that you're going to have to sometimes do that over and over, because you don't like hearing things sometimes, and you'll reject it. You clearly don't understand what's going on in my life, and we've got to get a way to, get over that, I guess. I mean, it's not easy, all right? It's nothing easy.
Yeah.
Nothing easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think really what's important is that we have to be willing to try something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And
Or
we get
go back to where your first love is. You know, in Revelation, God talks about that. You've lost your first love. And so, you know, for me, if I can love as Jesus loves, right, with patience, kindness, and that's what he promises that he will do when we say yes to him. His transformation comes, what does Jesus say? Through the transformation of your mind. So, Elary, to your point, we really need this checkup from the neck up. What are we really thinking here? Because is it true? Does it align with God's word? Really? Are we being obedient to what he's asking us to do? You know, we really need to be honest. Honesty, know who we are, know who we're not. Like in John's gospel, you know, he says, I'm John the Baptist. I am not the Messiah. That's what he said. I am not this. So we need these questions about ourselves. And what do you think you really are? And what, you know, what's the truth here? So.
Well, and I love that. And I love how we were kind of talking about how God describes himself as love.
He is
right?
love.
God is love. And when you think about it, God knows everything.
Yes.
And the outcome of knowing more is love. Right. And when we get, and this is why empathy is so important in our relationships and in our lives, and realizing that we don't have the whole story. Right. And just like your wise pastor is going to say, well, I know we're just getting one side of the story here. Right. And so really to be more loving, we have to enlarge what we're willing to see.
Yep.
Yes, I love that.
We can't just see it from our own perspective.
Yes.
We have to be able to open it up. And I just, we're getting about ready that we need to start wrapping up here.
Yes.
Of course, you know, I'm always like, you know, Carolyn and I, we would just talk for hours. Women love to talk about relationships. I'm like, the sun will come down and come back up. We'll still be talking about it and how much we love God and Jesus, right? We're just going to love the whole thing. But I really appreciated what you were talking about at the beginning about how intentional you were about the time that you had together.
Yes.
And I think that that's a lesson that anyone could take away from your experience. And because you're not the first couple that I've talked to that have had kind of like a long distance relationship or where you have a very limited amount of time together, right? And when that time is short, you say, what's really important?
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
What kind of, our entire relationship is going to be, you know, within this 48 hours.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling like, you know, we just got all the time in the world. And in fact, I'm sick of seeing you, right? Sometimes you can, that familiarity can breed contempt. But as far as like actionable things that our listeners can take away from this podcast episode, I would say, you know, really having that intentional time.
Yes.
But even if you are going through difficulty, right? Even if there's that, let's take a time out, right? And let's make sure again, that we have that positive energy so we can make positive change.
Yeah.
Because as long as we stay in that negative energy, the only kind of change we're going to see is going to be a negative change.
Yep.
Right.
One of my major takeaways was when you get stuck, because I think all couples eventually find themselves there, like to find the right kinds of help. And to not think that you have to figure it out on your own, or that your spouse is the one who has to have all the answers. I mean, we in every other area of life, when the HVAC unit goes out, when something's wrong under the hood of the car, you know, or there's a plumbing issue, we don't hesitate. And we have to adopt the same philosophy for our romantic relationships.
Yes.
In order to continue to grow in love.
Yes.
Because every relationship always has room to grow. And we want to speak life over the relationships. Those of you who are hearing and experiencing this powerful story, we want you to know that the best is yet to come.
Yes,
you know, and even when you have faced a difficult and dark time, I know one of my she's like an adoptive mother to me. She says it's gonna be okay in the end.
Yes, this too shall pass.
Yes, and if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And I think to your point too, we have to go to the one who does know, and it's neither of us. God knows, and we have had many big decisions to have to make. And I have a lovely story on that, but we've run out of time. But what did I do when I need to make a decision? I didn't run to my mother. I didn't run to my friend. I ran to the one who knew and knows. You know, Jeremiah 29:11 is my rock, and it's my lifeline. But interestingly, verses 12, 13, and 14 are all about choice. So there's the promise. God gives us a promise, but wake up, people. You know what? You only get the promise when you do the premise, which is the action. So for me to have peace, what do I need to do? Philippians, you know, it's, I think, chapter 4, we rejoice. We thank God for who he is and all of that. And then we let him know our need. So we go running to him, go to the one who knows, go to the creator who already knows what we need before we ask. And that is where hope springs eternal, which, is my hoodie. I just have to show it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it. Hope springs eternal.
Hope springs eternal. And
Yes.
as we're wrapping up, would you mind letting us know the title of the book again, so that the listeners can
it's to get perspective. So it's called Above the Turbulence, Your Ticket Out of Pain to Purpose. So I was a travel agent. It's written as if you've come to me into my office and I tell you about all things travel, what you need to pack before you go, what you need on the journey, your destinations, the perils of travel, and homeward bound. But it's really an analogy for traveling life and traveling with God above the purpose, and he gives you purpose in your pain.
That's awesome. Where can
Amazon.
listeners Amazon?
Yeah, just you can just type my name and I believe it goes straight to my book. Or awesome. Hopefully there's a link in the notes.
So your fabulous husband, who's there smiling next to you, I gotta ask him for, you know, some if you want to leave one nugget of wisdom with the couples who are watching, who might need a little bit of hope, what would you say, Brendon?
Dedication. Take the time, go deeper, not wider, and just, trust. You've got to believe that God put us together, that we do trust one another, we do love one another, and that you've got to give that time. If you're shallow and you skim around the edges, it's not nothing will work if you don't give it time, and you've got to give it attention and focus. So
you mean we can't plant a tree and expect for there to be fruit on it in the next 5 minutes?
Exactly. Yep. You've got to water it. You've got to nurture it. You've got to do all of those things. And it's not easy, but when you give it focus and you give it time, you can be amazed at what the outcomes, what the fruit is. All right.
You don't reap in the same season either, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So be patient, be kind.
We could be on all night long.
Yeah.
This is so good. We so appreciate both of you for coming and sharing with us on the Grow in Love show. And we want to encourage our listeners to go and type in that name, Caroline Deck.
No, Carolyn.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Is it YNN?
LYN.
LYN. Deck. Carolyn Deck. DECK. And everything will pop right up on Amazon. And so thank you again for sharing with us. There's so many. We could be on forever. But since we've reached our time, we want to encourage our listeners to continue to tune in, to subscribe. because every relationship always has room to grow. And you're not stuck where you are. If you get out of isolation, there are people who have earned the right to know your story that can help you get to a better place. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Grow in Love show. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single podcast. And remember, every relationship always has room to grow.